Okay, so yes, I was a lead author on a chapter called Regional Context, which is a rather strangely named chapter. In some sense, it's the lead into the second part of the Working Group II report, which is the region where they go region by region to look at impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. Regional context was in some sense to set the context for that. I've also been a lead author on the third and fourth assessment reports, but in that instance I was in Working Group I. So I sort of count myself as a climate scientist who is now has moved over into the Working Group II, the impacts and adaptation and vulnerability area of work, and that's sort of the area that really I want to focus on. So when we were asked to put these talks together, we were asked to try and avoid death by PowerPoint. So I'm doing my best to do that, and I'm showing just one slide. And the subject I'm interested in is this idea of making climate science and climate scientists, such as myself, actually really useful. And how Working Group II is relevant in that context. We have a whole series of examples that you've heard already about how the climate science has been able to demonstrate the reason why the world's warming, and then by being able to do that, we have confidence in that it's going to carry on doing that. This sort of work is now being applied to looking at specific climate events, so we can understand the role of climate change in increasing the intensity and frequency of those sorts of events. The climate scientists now are working with impact scientists, so this is now going into the Working Group II arena, and this idea of attribution, of understanding the role of climate and climate change in observed impacts. This was a big new area in the Working Group II report, and so we can now start to look at how climate change is influencing people and places, human and natural systems. And so we're starting to make quite a significant progress in all of these areas. And as we are able to explain the reason why certain changes have happened in the natural world and in human systems, this then gives us more confidence that we can use the projections and predictions of the future then to say something about how those are going to change in the future. But the thing that I'm really interested in is the process of actually being able to get at that information, and the interaction between the climate scientists and the scientists who are working in Working Group II. And I think we need to be able to understand there's a difference there. The scientists in Working Group II are scientists that are coming from, they're social scientists, they're ecosystem scientists, they're hydrologists, they're agricultural scientists, they are economists. So you could class them as climate change scientists, but in fact they actually come from a whole series of different disciplines. And the reason why this is important is because if you're trying to understand how climate is affecting a particular system, you need to know all the other things that might be affecting that system. And then if you need to understand how that system should be responding, then also you need to know the other factors that may be able to assist in reducing the vulnerability of the people. So the sorts of information that you need comes from a whole series of different disciplines. So in the context of making climate science and climate scientists really useful, this application along with these other disciplines is really helping to focus the climate science onto the problems that are really important. And I mean, in many cases we have good information, but a couple of the examples that you will see up there, which are from Central Asia, are the sorts of areas where there's still a lot more things that we need to do. So on the right, you've got hillsides which are falling away because of extreme precipitation. We have no idea whether that stuff is changing. We might have some idea of where it's going in the future, but we don't really know whether that's changing because we don't have the observations. On the left, you've got an area where they're planning to build a big new dam. We don't really know how much more water is going to be coming down into that area. Okay, so the working on these specific areas of impacts and potential adaptations is where you can really are able to transfer the climate science, the climate knowledge into something that is useful. But the really interesting thing about all of this is it's actually that interaction. Because when you come into the example of the middle picture, so this is a farming community in West Africa, if you want to help them to adapt to climate change or to understand how they may be affected, you need to understand the climate events that are important to them, how much is it that they know about those events, about how they can predict, what options they have to maybe to avoid damages or to get benefit from certain climate outcomes, and the whole array of resources that they have at their disposal within the community, at the regional level, the national level, in the civil society. Now, expertise on all of that stuff is in Working Group II. So, but it's actually the whole communication of that sort of information, all those different disciplines, with the people who are really need to actually know that, and then working with them to actually understand what it is they really do need to know, what's actually important to them. That's where you get that's where and you have to build understanding. You have to build understanding in them. You have to build understanding in yourself, and it's that interaction and that communication which leads to new knowledge, and it leads to new research questions. Okay, we go there, we find there is stuff that they need to know that we aren't able to tell them, but that's the crucial bit of information that they really need. So I think the really interesting thing is, and in the context of the overall title of this conference, which is Transformational Climate Science, this is where it's happening. It's that interaction between the different disciplines of the science and the people who are using them, and then them all working together to find out what they can do now, what they need to do in the future, and what we still need to research to be able to solve a lot of these problems. Thank you very much.